Maruti's began its electric innings with the car that you see behind us. We're talking about the Vitara, and it's been unveiled at the Bharat Mobility Expo 2025. Here is everything that you need to know about the car. We begin with the face of the new Maruti Suzuki Vitara, and some of the major highlights include this new design for the headlamps with the tri-elements inside, the signature Suzuki logo with the black cladding, and of course the grille-less face. While this might be the Vitara brand name, it's something completely new, not just for Suzuki but Maruti Suzuki as well. Here on the side of this Maruti Suzuki Vitara, some of the major design elements include these aero-inspired wheels, the roofline that slightly tilts forward, large ORVMs, cameras in them, and of course you get a sort of floating effect thanks to the door handles being fitted here. This was first introduced by Maruti Suzuki with the last generation Swift, and it's been given to the Vitara. At the rear, Maruti has jumped onto the bandwagon of a connected tail lamp. I mean, this looks like a connected element, but you get separate brake lights on the side. Some of the other major highlights include the high-mounted stop lamp, a slightly like sort of curved design here, and of course this black cladding for the bumpers. Overall, while the Vitara on paper at least might be a small car, it has more than enough muscular elements to give the car a sort of squat stance that's meant to attract attention. We're here in the second row of this Maruti Suzuki Vitara, and initial impressions point to a nice shoulder room and headroom. But of course, you have a large battery pack underneath, so as you can see, under-thigh support is not particularly great, and that is something that comes with it being an EV. Some of the major highlights here include seat back pockets, rear AC vents with fan control, USB-C charging ports, and of course cup holders in the center armrest. By the way, the rear seats split fold 40-20-40, and if you want the armrest, you need to put this center section down, which means they can only two people can sit here. You also of course get this wire holder for the charger in case you're planning to work that way. Now, these are just some initial impressions of the interiors of this Maruti Suzuki Vitara, and of course we will give you in complete detail what the car is like when we get to drive it. If you want to know something, you can let us know in the comment section below. We're here in the front of this Maruti Suzuki Vitara, and it's taken many elements from the concept car and retained them in a kind of almost entirety, but there are also some new design elements that will be not just for the Vitara but also the future Maruti Suzuki cars. The first is this full digital instrument cluster, the first for the Suzuki vehicle, this new interface for the climate control system, this new center console that's covered in gloss black plastic with an electric parking brake and a new gear lever. The steering is familiar Suzuki, and Suzuki returns to the two-spoke steering fold after a really long time. In fact, the last time they had two-spoke cars was almost in the late 80s and early 90s. It's a nice thing and a nice way to transition. Initial impressions in some of the materials feel like hard-wearing plastics, even though they look nice, especially here on the dashboard and some of the materials on the doors. But that is a kind of compromise we think Suzuki has had to make in balancing the cost of the vehicle. Overall, it's a nice place to be in. Oh, and there's a nice large sunroof here, which adds a nice amount of airiness to the cabin. They've used some bright materials here to really liven up the cabin, and it does look nice overall. And like we say, that these are some initial impressions, and we'll of course get a chance to look at the car in detail when we get to drive it later this year. And if you want to know something about it, you can put out your questions and we'll answer them at that time when we get behind the wheel of the car. And finally, we wrap up our design highlights by looking at the boot of this Maruti Suzuki Vitara. The boot is not particularly long and not particularly deep either, and that's because of the large battery pack underneath. The accessibility is pretty good though. The loading lip is not high, and you get the surface here to load stuff before you slide it into the boot. You of course get a large parcel tray, and the rear seat split fold 40-20-40, which means that you get additional space. In fact, folding rear seats has been a signature of Maruti Suzuki right since the original 800 nearly 40 years ago. We're going to wrap up our overlook of the Maruti Suzuki e-Vitara by giving you some of the important announcements that Maruti Suzuki made at the unveiling of the vehicle. The first is that this car has a 2700mm wheelbase, one of the largest in the segment. How it's going to stack up to the rivals, that we'll find out in a while. The second is that it will get a 500km plus range. They've not revealed an exact number, and it's not expected to be on lines with what is in the international version given our road conditions and weather and so on and so forth. Third is that, of course, we showed you the rear seat reclines. That's something, again, first in segment. There's going to be 7 airbags with the driver getting a knee airbag. And this will be the first Maruti Suzuki to debut level 2 ADAS. I mean, it's apt that Maruti Suzuki is going into something completely new and they decided to debut a popular technology with that car. Third is that it gets 18-inch wheels and has a 5.2-meter turning radius, making it one of the tightest in the segment. The last is that Maruti Suzuki is going to set up a charging network across 100 cities in India, with more to follow over the course of the next 2 years, and has also created a dedicated EV app that will be launched at the time of this car. Lastly, we forgot to point out, this will be a Nexa vehicle sold exclusively through the Nexa retail and will be Maruti's small flagship. So there you have it, our first look at the Maruti Suzuki e-Vitara. What do you think of the car? Do let us know in the comment section below. What do you want to know about the vehicle before we drive it? Do let us know about that too in the comment section below. And before we sign off, here's a reminder to like, share and subscribe to the CarWale YouTube channel. Thank you so much for watching. Take care.